Welcome back to our class on the religion and society. We have already defined religion from a sociological perspective and trying to do away with the theological aspects of the definition of what religion is, or even philosophical, because philosophically speaking, there's also a philosophy of religion, but that is not the concern of our course, I believe. But for those of you who are students of religious education and social science, you may want to look into that, no? For depending on your interest. But for the purposes of this class, I would like to focus now on what are the causal powers that religion produce. In other words, so what are the things that are, shall we say, products and features and powers of religion? Now, as already defined in our lesson on the definition of what religion is, it is very important that the element of the superhuman powers is there. And therefore, religion is not just merely a social institution, but it is actually being distinguished from all other human doings, other institutions, precisely because of that element of the engagement with the superhuman powers, and as well as for the sake of avoiding bads and achieving that which is good, such as blessings, protections, and deliverance. Now, this is not the only product or feature or powers of religion, because there are also secondary. But take note that these secondary features, powers, and products is meaningless in our definition if the element of the superhuman powers is not there. Why? Because these things can be achieved by any other organizations. For example, like you are a member of the Rotary Club, or you're a member of a Lions Club, or you're a member of shall we say, Freemasonry, or any other groups, no, that can give also this almost similar secondary features, products, and powers. Okay, so take note that all this will only be meaningful from the perspective of our definition of what religion is, if we are going to take note of the what I said already, the element of the superhuman, the engagement with the superhuman powers that yields the result of the avoidance of evil and the realization of human goods. Okay, now there are many observable products, features, and powers that are secondary to having religion. So first is the identity. Of course, we know that you are part of our identity, unless, again, you already belong to a post-structural mindset, wherein groups are considered as hindrance or as blocks rather than as, shall we say, an attribute, no? So, depending. But from a perspective of our purposes here in this class, is that it can give you identity. For example, I am a Roman Catholic. So, more or less, it gives those who know me an idea of what I believe and what I do, and what are my thoughts on certain issues, and etc. So identity, that's the first thing. But of course, as I said, but without the superhuman powers, without this belief in the superhuman powers, this can also be considered as can be also given by any other clubs that I join. If, for example, I join the Rotary, so it can also give me identity. Okay, so there are three levels to identity, of course: the personal, the group, and the social. So you know what the personal is the distinction of a particular person from the rest. And of course, it exhibits continuity, no, over time, which means that I am, as you know me, for my own, with my personal identity, not only today, but if, way back, years, or even years from now, years back or years forward. So, second is group identity. It's the understanding of the characteristics of the selves that is derived from the membership in that particular social group or institution. So again, I have an identity. For example, as a Catholic, I have my own identity. You as a Catholic also, or as a Protestant. So you can also be distinct from the rest, like if you're ordained or lay, whether you are in administrative positions or not, and so on and so forth. No? So what are your beliefs? What kind of Catholic you are, for example? Are you conservative, traditional, liberal, progressive, and so on and so forth. No? So, and there may many other things that can also be, shall we say, defined and redefined, as well as refined the sense of identity. And of course, the last is the social group identity, which is the common social occasion and shared emotional investment. Uh, it's a joint subdivision. So in a sense that I have this. Well, it depends actually on the particular theory that you're using, but in this particular point, what I'm saying is, if my social identity now would also be, of course, I'm Catholic, but if you're in the States, for example, Catholics from California might differ from Catholics from Texas. No? So, or in the Philippine context, for example, Catholics from Cebu are, although we are different from Catholics from Bacolod. Okay? So, like for example, Bacolod Catholics are, Catholics from the Diocese of Bacolod are considered to be socially aware, and we have a history of social activism here. But on the other hand, without stereotyping, we can say that those in Cebu are liturgically oriented compared to that in the Diocese of Bacolod, which is more or less social justice oriented. Okay, so those are the things that gives us identity. That is the levels of identity: the personal, the group, and the social. Now let's proceed to another secondary product, and that is community. Community belonging, social solidarity, and social support. So community belonging means that membership in a relationally significant social group. So when I enter into a group, I am connected to that. No? So I invest into that. Not only in the sense I am just a member by name, but you really invest. No? For example, you give your time, your effort, your money in that particular group that you are involved in. So there's a relational there, and you feel belong to that. There's a sense of belonging in short. So, for example, siguro, just an example, a CWL or Catholic Women's League member felt she belongs to the group. Of course, if you're a man, and you will not feel belong there because that is for the women. Yeah, okay. So social solidarity, the cohesion and integration derived from a place in an effectively significant social network of a relatively homogeneous group. Okay, so I believe this is an example of this is like all the lay associations in the diocese can have the sense that they belong to, although they do not belong to the same group particularly, but in a sense that they are all associations belonging to the laity, and so there is a significant social networks that's happening there. And social support. Of course, if you're a member of the group, you are being taken care of, assisted by others in that particular social relationship. Okay? This will not happen if you're not a member of the group. For example, if you are a Catholic and, or shall we say, you're not a Catholic, no? So let's put it that way. you would not feel you belong to the Catholic groups. So it would be difficult. And this is the reason why some of our so-called non-denominational churches or communities would really make sure that the visitors would feel that they belong there. Because once they felt that they belong there, that they felt accepted, automatically, more or less, they are one step na in proselytizing you. This is a very important element actually in the religion, as is in its products, features, and powers. And also meaning. It gives you meaning. The first one is moral order, is the normative system specifying, organizing good, right, and proper relationships among persons and groups. No? So, like, if you're a Christian, I mean, let's put it this way: if in a Muslim country, Christians will not have the same rights and privileges from the Muslims, for example. And in terms of the good or the right or the relationship among them, it is different, no? So depende na siya. So for example, if you're a fundamentalist, you would want to convert the person. So because for you, the person is supposed to be, I mean, your religion pushes you to convert other people, because that is for you the meaning of that particular religion. Okay, cosmic or life meaning, understanding the larger ultimate significance of purpose of life in the universe. So what is the meaning that is given to you? For example, in some of the emerging religions like parachurches or great church or parachurches, no? They would offer, like, if you join us, then you will become prosperous. So the idea of life as somewhat to be enjoyed and suffering to be avoided. So it gives, depending on what particular group you belong, you will also have that life meaning, that distinct meaning. For example, if you belong to the Buddhist, if you're a Buddhist, for example, and so you see these things as passing, you're being taught how to see life, how to give meaning to life, and even suffering, how you look at suffering. Like, for example, for Buddhists, sufferings are illusory. Right? It's just illusion. It's just passing. And suffering comes because of incorrect action, incorrect thinking, incorrect feeling, and incorrect, therefore, no? The right feelings, right words, right thoughts, and right actions. No? So suffering happens because of that. But if you're a Christian, particularly if you're a Catholic, you see suffering as real, not as illusory, but you see it as a problem, either as a problem of evil or as a participation in the suffering of Jesus, as in the Pauline theology. So again, it gives you meaning, in the life meaning, a meaning to your life as a way of thinking or a paradigm. So that's one thing. No? So if you belong to a particular group, you will achieve this particular life meaning or cosmic meaning. And that is, of course, related to theodicy, explanations of suffering, injustice, and death. Okay, so sorry I gave you the example of suffering, but it properly belongs to theodicy. But my point is, if you belong to a group or a religion, certainly you will acquire a life meaning. And that life meaning may be related to how we understand suffering, how do we understand justice, and how do we understand death. Like, for example, if you're a Buddhist, of course, death for you is also illusory, because life is an illusion. And our goal is to get out of this samsara, that is the cycle of birth and death and rebirth, and so to achieve nirvana. So, and how do you achieve nirvana? By knowing that all of these are illusions and rising above suffering, not to be affected by it. Well, that's how the theology, more or less, of the Buddhists are. But for Christians, you have a different way of thinking in terms of meaning. Because we only have one life. One life, after that, justice, whether you go to heaven or hell. Or if you're Catholic, whether you go to heaven or hell or purgatory. So by subscribing, by becoming part of a religion, you also have a theodicy, no? You acquire also meaning as to how to interpret these things that are happening around. Okay, so we also have expression and experience. So we already have identity, community, meaning, expression, and experience will be the fourth. So artistic expression or creation, artistic creation, the crafting and building of expressive or attractive objects and performances. Of course, it's very, very obvious, no? So a Catholic has his own art. So supposedly, when you go to a Catholic church, you will have the elements present in that church that are also present in other churches, because those are the elements that are common. And if you go to a Buddhist meditation hall or a Tibetan temple, Tibetan Buddhist temple, you also see elements there, the decorations and etc. So that's the aesthetic. Or if you're a Catholic, then you have for example, your necklaces made of crucifixes or images of the saints. If you are Buddhist, you also have your own Buddhist images there, and it has also its standards, no, etc. And like you also have your japa beads like this. Okay, so this is a sort of the rosary of Buddhists, but not only the Buddhists, but even the Hindus, they also have this, no? So this is one example. So the way it is done is different from the rosary. Okay, let me just get it from. I was able to prepare to explain this matter. So the aesthetics of this, no, the design, the craft. So this is different. So this is a japa beads, and these are. This is a rosary. So the way it is crafted, although it is for the same purpose of prayer, as a sort of aid for prayer, but the way it is done differs in various religion. So this is it, no? In terms of religion. Well, for example, if you are part of a group, maybe you also do that, no? Like the Rotary, they arrange furnitures according to, I mean, not the Rotary, I'm not familiar with that, but the Freemasons, for example, they also have their own symbols, etc. And the way they design things, no? Their decorations is dependent on that also, on their own. Okay, in aesthetic expression, the outward subjective feelings, ideas, and desires through singing, dancing, shouting, speaking, etc. For example, if you're a charismatic member, you always have this glosolalia. You praise God by speaking tongues. But you don't do that if you are not in the charismatic movement. So if you are part of a charismatic movement, you cannot avoid it. You will really undergo that. Of course, there are questions as to what real glossolalia is. Pero, well, I'm not charismatic, so I was not able to really experience glossolalia. Pero that's what I mean, no? Non-charismatic movement will have a different way of expressing their feelings, their sentiments from that of those who are charismatic. In the same way also, for example, if you are in Hinduism, for example, the bhakti are different from the other yogic practitioners. Like, for example, if you're a member of Hare Krishna, you chant the mantra, the Maha Mantra. But if you are not into bhakti, like you are into asana or hatha yoga, so you just do your positioning, no? You're the body. So you have the bodily postures for the asana and the breathing, and for the hatha yoga. But if you belong to the bhakti, these postures are not really significant in your practice, but you are more of the chanting. No? So again, it gives you various ways by which you express your feelings. And the transcendent experience. So it's the encounters or event of joy, awe, enlightenment, rapture, the divine union. So it gives you that sense of being beyond yourself. And the way it is expressed differs, of course, depending on your group. As I said, for example, in Hinduism, for them, for a bhakti yogic practitioner, that sense of joy when you are singing the Mahamantra, for example, will bring you to ecstasy. Well, if you are into Hatha Yoga, the achievement of the postures or the asanas will be able to bring you also a transcendent experience. And some, like in the primitive, not really primitive, but tribal religions, you will have those like people are using chemicals or substances to induce transcendent or ecstatic expressions. In Tibetan Buddhism, for example, there is this part of the year, in their own liturgical year, wherein they have to consult the oracle. And the oracle, of course, they are not using substances, but the oracle will go into a trance, and in that trance, he will make divinations for the coming year or to answer the questions of people. So those are some examples. No? And of course, which is very sociological, social control. The first one is the internal self-regulation, which means that it's a voluntary compliance with the established norms of thought and behavior. So, for example, if you're a Muslim, you don't eat pork. Or if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you don't eat also crabs or dinuguan and so on and so forth. So you have these rules that you have to impose because you know that these are wrong according to your own religion. And Catholics, for example, abortion is considered as a grievous sin. But for Protestants, it's not really that matter. It doesn't really matter. Interpersonal controls is establish compliance with the established norms of thoughts through informal rewards and sanctions communicated through relational interactions. So, interpersonal controls. So, mga sa ibang no? Excommunication, for example, before, if you commit a mistake or you went against the hierarchy, you are excommunicated. That is an example of interpersonal controls. Another example may be in mga tiwalag in the Iglesia ni Cristo language. Those who are no longer doing what they are supposed to do as a good member or as a member in good standing. So there are punishments. But at the same time, there are also rewards. But this reward is not very obvious. So maybe promotion in terms of your leadership there, or recognition as a person of credibility, maybe. Okay, and then the formal social controls. Compliance with the established norms of thoughts and behavior achieved through institutionalized standards, expectations, monitoring, systems of rewards and punishment. Sorry. I mixed up my example. Interpersonal is more of the between us, no? The example that I gave is more of the formal social controls, no? Wherein the institution itself will have to impose the punishment or the reward. But interpersonal, kita-kita, no? For example, among friends, for example, no? Kung may kasalatan ng mga friends, what do? You ostracize, no? Gina-reject nyo. Or hindi tayo maupod sa iya kay client sa iya. Something like that. Okay? So, just reverse the order. Legitimacy, institutional legitimation. Acknowledgement of acceptability or right of established social practices in organization that exercises authority in social settings. Of course, for example, in the Catholic Church, the hierarchy is considered as a legitimate representative for the Catholics, no? So, and they also exercise influence over governments, for example, which is related to the next part. No? So that's political legitimacy, the acceptance of the rightful authority of a state or a political regime to govern. Okay, so the secondary products in terms of religion naman, yeah, is of course we recognize that like the hierarchy, the bishop, the priest, no, they have their authority over that group. And lastly is the legitimacy of dissent, belief in the right or justification of opposition, resistance against what is believed an illegitimate practice, organization, or regime. So, well, you can, in other words, pwede ka ka-reklamo, pwede ka ka-boycott, pwede ka you have this, what happened in the past, the group, the Catholics, dissented against the passing of the RH law. So, okay, so those are the secondary products, features, and powers, no, of religion. But again, it should be looked into a context of the superhuman powers. Okay. Now, let us go into the religious multiple mechanism of causal influence. So, to appreciate the scope of religious impact on human life, we need to broaden our vision of the diverse means by which religion exerts causal powers. The first one is prescriptive teachings. Second, the social influence of network ties, the contextual effects, and social service programs, generating social capital, religious institutions secularized, and secular transposition of religious disposition and practices, institutional legal codes, direct interventions by religious authorities, deep culture and invisible religion, and so many other, no? Dami. So, number one, let's look into the prescriptive teachings. So, if you belong to a religion, it has its own promulgated practices. I think I have mentioned that examples kanina. So, you are prescribed to do certain things or to avoid certain things. So, if you are a Buddhist, for example, it is against your prescriptive, against your religion's prescriptive teachings to harm other people. So, you don't eat meat products. Instead, you eat vegetables. No? You're a vegetarian. But not all Buddhists are vegetarians. No? Take note of that. Because the Tibetans can eat meat, which is not, of course, allowed in other Buddhists. Like if you belong to the strand of Buddhism in Thailand or in other places, no? Like China, something like that. So why? Well, because of context. Tibet is a mountainous region and vegetables there are very rare. So if they are going to be strict vegetarian, what will happen to them? They will die. So I think they made some provisions in that. They, on certain occasions, they can eat meat. No? That's for the Tibetan Buddhism. But now, since Tibetan Buddhism has already migrated from the plateau of Tibet to certain parts of the world, like in Dharamsala, and in the United States or in Europe, then I think they have gone also. Let's say within Tibetan Buddhism, there are also a lot of sect. Just like Christianity. When you say Christianity, it's not just one single monolithic institution. And there are varying practices within that particular religion. So when I say Christianity, there are a lot of sect and denominations there with its own various ways of practices. So that's also the same with Tibetan Buddhism. Like, as I said, some of the groups there allowed their followers to eat meat. But some would allow their followers to eat meat, but not their religious. Like if you're a monk, it's really against it. But if you're just an ordinary Tibetan Buddhist, you may. So, something like that. And many others. Example. So, social influence of network ties. By following, besides following the formal teachings of religion, the religious practices or practitioners are frequently swayed by the influences of the social network ties that the religious communities establish. For example, if you hear your pastor advocating a certain advocacy, you may want to do it because your pastor says so. I think one of that is, I don't know if this is a prescribed, but like the voting practices of the INC, baka sa kanila, baka prescriptive yan. So, they are really forced to do it. I don't know because I'm not an insider. But that's one example. No? Yung, when the pastor or the leader will say so, the flock or the majority at the very least will follow what the pastor is trying to advocate. So, yan. Like, if you are, another example, if you're Opus Dei, for example, member of Opus Dei, and you are rich, most probably you will send your child to the University of Asia in the Pacific, which is controlled by the Opus Dei, because you know that that particular school will inculcate the values and the teachings of your group. Okay. And I think similar also to, for example, Adventists sending their children to Adventist universities or schools, and also Catholic. Pero as I said, there are other factors that may influence the decision where to send your students or your children. I remember one particular event, like during the RH law controversy. I was preaching in the cathedral, and then I was asking the people to stay for the unveiling of the tarpaulin against abortion and against the RH law and many other issues. Well, a lot of them did not follow. So it shows that Catholics has a different way of looking at this matter. Like another example, at the time, Bishop Emeritus Navarra called on the Catholics of Bacolod to vote for the Kapatiran candidates, but I think very few followed him. So again, it depends on the group. But I think if the INC, for example, will talk about this matter, their followers also have a different way of reactions. So maybe they really follow their leaders, no? Unlike Catholics who are still, they would just listen and then they just take it or leave it, no? At their own pleasure. Okay, so contextual effects. This, on the other hand, is the case which operate not through individual beliefs or face-to-face prompting, nor the ongoing influence of religiously founded institutions. Rather, here, religion shapes a larger context at the level of an entire community or a population of people. From the social to the personal is a downward causation. Example, in the American context. So, if you are moving from to the American South, you become more religious because the people around you are very religious, and so in one way or the other, you will be influenced. No? And the survey actually shows that if you are from the northern American part of the United States, going south, like you go to Texas, you become more religious. But on the other hand, if you move from the south going to the north, you become less religious. Of course, you see here, it's the larger societal influence, it is the larger, what was the term? Okay, it's the shared, it's the shared religious feature coming from a collective environment. Okay, ang palibot mo are religious, so you become religious also, more or less you are forced to become that. But on the other hand, if you're moving from the south to the north, like you go to New York State and go to New York City, for example, we know that New York is a very secular place, and more or less, if you are from the south, you will be influenced, no? By not because of your own decision, but because of the context. In the Philippines, what can we say about this? Parang hindi ako makakita ng particular example. In the context, maybe you can think and we can discuss that in class, no? Okay. Social service programs. That's another. The church is able to have influence over people because of its social services. That's why, ang iba, no? Yung mga reliyon, they will conduct like free medical checkups, medical missions, but at the same time, they will proselytize. And they would gain the goodwill of people. And in that way, they do have influence over society and many others. Not like, for example, you will have your relief programs, and this builds social capital. People will consider you as credible because you're giving out something. And this is very obvious before, no? And the question of what we call livelihood projects and relief goods. Before, in the Diocese of Bacolod, we have plenty of organizations, grassroots organizations. And in the church, we term that as the basic Christian communities. It was so vibrant. But the reason for that, other than the contextual the contextual effects, no? Other than the contextual effects of martial law, it also, I believe, is highly contributed. The success is the success of that movement, of the BCC, or the basic Christian communities, not only because of the contextual effects of the martial law, which force people to find their voice in their groups, or else they would just be heard and be marginal. They won't be heard; they would just be marginalized. Is the social services, because if there are aids from abroad, the first beneficiaries would certainly be the members of the BCC. So there are funding for livelihood projects, or scholarship. So who will benefit from that? Of course, the members. And so in order to attain that, rather to avail of that benefit, they joined the BCC. Nowadays, it's non-existing, almost non-existing. It has reduced now itself to liturgical, because there are no more aids coming. There are no more financial aids coming from abroad. No more livelihood projects. No more. So people also are not into it. But look at the other sect or denominations. Why is it that they are increasing in number? Why is it that they are increasing in their membership? Because there are scholarship programs. One of the schools in Hinigaran, this particular high school before was one of those very small groups, but they are now becoming larger. Why? Because there are scholarships there given by their own by that Protestant school, and so Catholics would even go there. Unfortunately, once you are there, you also have to undergo, as I already mentioned before in the previous part of this video, you will also undergo the mechanism, the causal influencing happening over you. So you follow as a part of the group, you follow their prescriptions, you follow their teachings, you follow their way of behaving. And later on, without knowing it, you're no longer Catholic, you're already a Protestant. You see? And I think that is a very good case study. But unfortunately, we don't have time for that in this class. Now, a part of that social service programs is actually, as I already mentioned, to create social capital. So it generates social capital. It gives you social relationships of trust and reciprocity. So people, when they receive this scholarship, when they receive these benefits from this particular group, you gain their trust. And if you're proselytizing, later on, they become your members. The question lang is, how deep is your love? What I mean is, if the giving, the social relief services will end, will they remain part of your group or no longer? Okay, so we have different things, but I think this is enough for this part. We will continue this lesson in the next video. Thank you very much. Please listen to it again and again if you were not able to catch up, and you may refer to the textbook. Thank you very much. Until next time.